Hello everyone, this is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I welcome everyone who is here in the chat room today. I did have a little bit of internet problems. I've just restarted two routers, and it kind of like all of a sudden the screen went black and then came back. But you're all here, so I'm going to go ahead with the show. But if you're watching the show and it goes black for a second, just wait for it to pop back up, and we'll see what happens. So anyway. Oh, you can see and hear me at least until the screen goes black. I have no idea what the problem is. Nobody is home but me, so it's not overuse of the computer. Let me welcome Carolyn, and let me welcome Martin and Red Rum. Oh, Red Rum says, "Well, what were you holding to your face?" I was in my thumbnail, and I was pretending to cry. No, I don't really own any crying rags, so this is... This is what was available on my table. Okay, so that's that. Hi, Martin. Hi, Ann. Let's see, what did I say? Red Rum say. Doreen is here. Benny's here. Well, is anybody else here? Lisa S. is here. And Carrie's here. And I'm down to the bottom. And Caroline is here. And I think I've got everybody, but if I don't, come on, now they're foggy, I just came back from watching my granddaughter play on the soccer field in the sweltering now summer sun of Maryland. We have only 1 day of fall and 2 days of spring in the year, or 1 day of spring and 2 days of fall, and the rest of the time is crappy winter or really hot as heck summer. So now I'm hot and my glasses are fogging. Okay, I'm going to use my Canada fan from Ann. Thank you, Ann. Okay, so now onward to the show. By the way, if you'd like to participate in the chat room, please do go below and click on Patreon, and those are where anybody wants to participate in any of my live chats, you can do that. And if you just want to, support that, you can also support the channel that way, which would really be helpful. And if you don't have any cash, because it's a lot of the world is in a massive recession. Hey, just subscribe to the channel and like the video and share it with your friends and hit the bell and get notified and check my playlists and all that. If you want a cheap book to read, $2.99, great fiction story, it's my book. Okay, that's it for that. Now let's go to the story. All right, well, what are we talking about today? It was interesting because I just did a show It was a New Zealand show, and it was the conviction of Mark Lundy of killing his family, his wife and his daughter. And one of the... Oh, thank you, Lisa S. Life is short. Subscribe. It's painless, and it helps the channel. This is an educational channel, so, I'm never going to have 1 million subscribers, but I do love the subscribers I have, and best of all, I love my chat room folks who are my patrons because they really are interested in understanding crime, profiling, crime scene analysis. They're not just here just about, like a reality show, like what came in today that we can all talk about. They really want to understand things. So I think that's fantastic. So anyway, now, I just did the show, Mark Lundy, convicted of being a family annihilator in New Zealand. And I found a lot of if you want to know about that case, go to my playlist, and it's the Lundy murders. And I found the evidence really sketchy. I don't know if he's guilty or innocent, but I found the evidence not good enough. And I was surprised that he's been convicted and he's lost all his appeals. And I think it was an unsafe conviction, which is a fabulous term we don't have in the U.S., which apparently is in the Commonwealth countries. So UK, Australia, New Zealand, all of you have been trying to educate me as to what a Commonwealth country is. And they have unsafe convictions, which simply means not that the guy is innocent or guilty. He's not been exonerated, but something about the conviction was a little questionable and maybe shouldn't have happened. Okay, so here we have a U.S. case of what we would consider possibly an unsafe conviction. And it was the conviction of Anthony Broadwater of the rape of author Alice Sebold, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I screwed up in New Zealand. I pronounced the town wrong for like 10 times until Lisa, who is from New Zealand, said, "Stop saying that." So I'm hoping her name is Sebold. But she is a famous author. She wasn't at the time, mind you. She wrote this book, Lucky. That was her first book. She wrote it after she was raped by the person she believed raped her, which was Anthony Broadwater. That was her belief. She testified that it was him. He got convicted. She wrote this book. It didn't do that well, but then she wrote what's the name of the other book? The Lovely Bones, and she got very famous off of that, made a lot of money, and then this book sold 1 million after that. So she's doing well. Okay, so now this case is fascinating to me because it brings up a lot of issues. And again, I point out in this channel, this is not necessarily about saying somebody's guilty or innocent, but looking at evidence and how we perceive evidence so that we understand maybe what we should do better, where things go wrong, and where things, what's true and what isn't true, because it gets very convoluted. All right. She should have changed that title to Unlucky. Well, it was funny because originally she did think of herself as lucky that, at least in spite of what had happened, the person she claimed killed her I don't think he killed her, because it's hard to write from beyond the grave unless you're using one of those, people, what do you call those automatic writers? It's like I can contact somebody beyond the grave, and she told me that but no, who raped her? She claimed he raped her, and it was a hard experience. She wrote it in the book, and at that time she felt lucky because she had survived it. He was convicted, and she moved on. A struggle, but moved on. And it was a really helpful book to people who were victims of sexual assaults. But then he did get exonerated. So now, she could change it to Unlucky now because she's like, man, or he was unlucky. So that's why I titled this Lucky or Unlucky. Was he lucky or unlucky? How about her? Lucky or unlucky? Okay, so let me explain who Alice Sebold is in case you don't know who she is, and we have to know who she is to understand this entire case. Going to my favorite Wikipedia page, because I'm lazy. Alice Sebold was born in 1963. And this is kind of an interesting point, and I'm going to show this a little later. I was born in 1955. And there's an interesting, I'll read you an interesting article attacking Alice Sebold because of the era she was in when this all occurred. Okay? She was born in 1963. She's an American author. She's known for her novels, The Lovely Bones and The Almost Moon, and the memoir, Lucky. So essentially, she wrote the two books that really got her up there were the Lucky and mostly The Lovely Bones. That was like the one that really catapulted her. And then, let's see, The Lovely Bones was on the New York Times bestseller list and was adapted into a film by the same name in 2010. Her memoir, Lucky, sold over 1 million copies. And I am jealous. Okay. I never got any million. Anyway. Where's my crying rag? Okay. Anyway. Let's see. And describes her experience in her first year at Syracuse University. I can't even pronounce American names right. Syracuse University. When she was raped. Anthony Broadwater, who was, now this is the story here. So and the only reason I'm putting quotes around things is because I'm going to explain why I put the quotes around things. Not because I'm not saying he wasn't incorrectly identified. I'm just putting quotes because when I explain the evidence, you'll understand it. Okay? Incorrectly identified as the perpetrator by Sebold, and via a faulty method of hair analysis. They don't have quotes. I'm going to put quotes around that too. Faulty method of hair analysis. I'm going to explain a lot of the hair analysis issues. It's really interesting. Ultimately served 16 years in prison. He was exonerated in 2021. Yes, and this was, when I first looked at this, I'm like, wait a minute, he spent 16 years in prison, but he's exonerated in 2021, and here he is. I mean, I can't get out of the way of him. Okay, he's bent over because he's crying. He's like hysterically happy that he was finally exonerated. So what happened was, oh my God, hold on a second. This is going to be the sweating rag. I tell you, that soccer game, it was like 80, I don't know how hot it was, but it was hot. I'm drowning here. Hold on a second. I know y'all come for seeing these things. Okay, anyway, all right, back to things. All right, so he was exonerated, but years later, and I'll explain what happened, why he was in prison for 16 years. He was convicted, and then he got out because it was a rape, not a serial. It wasn't a homicide, it was a rape. He got out, and then he went on with his life, although not terribly happily, not the most successful life. And then finally, 40 years later, he got exonerated, and so he's now being declared he didn't commit the crime. Or, well, let me play. He's exonerated, meaning that it really was an unsafe conviction, was what they're saying. But in America, we're a little sketchy about that. So anyway, because they found he was exonerated. I'll put this again. In 2021, after a judge found serious issues with the original conviction. Okay, I'm going to explain whether I think there were serious issues with that original conviction, and then what's reality and what isn't reality, and I'll explain all of that. Okay, so anyway, that's the basics of what happened. All right, now later on, what happened was Broadwater. Let me go back to just Broadwater. And they wonder how this happened that he finally got exonerated. So I think that's interesting. Broadwater, what happened was there was a producer who wanted to make her book Lucky into a movie, and he was a kind of a sketchy dude himself with some criminal issues. Interesting, but I'm not going to get into that. And he got dumped from the project. They didn't get the money for the project. But meanwhile, he thought, hey, maybe this dude's innocent. And so he got together with some lawyers and stuff and investigators, and they went after the story. I don't know what his actual motive was, whether he wanted a new show, a documentary, or whether he really just thought, man, this guy's not guilty, and he did something honorable in his life. I don't know. But anyway, meanwhile, Broadwater tried 5 times to have the conviction overturned with at least as many groups of lawyers. When Timothy Now, if you wonder why I don't know these names, I'm not one of these shows that does 20 videos on one case, so that I've listened to every other YouTube video and every news report, and so I know all the pronunciations. His name is Timothy Mucciante. That's what I would say. Began working as an executive producer on a project. He noticed discrepancies in a portion of her book. Okay, she wasn't putting out discrepancies. He was concerned about how the case was handled. So she was pointing out the reality of what she experienced, and he found it that maybe something was going on with the police and prosecution that wasn't kosher. Okay, he said here, he was honest about this. He said, I started having some doubts, not about the story Alice told about her assault, which was tragic, but the second part of her book about the trial, which didn't hang together. He ultimately was fired from the project when he didn't provide funding. This is the Lucky story. And he subsequently hired a private investigator to review the evidence against Broadwater. And then in 2021, he was exonerated by a New York Supreme Court, who determined there had been serious issues with the original conviction, based on 2 pieces of evidence. One was a testimony about the hair analysis, and the other was which they say was unreliable, and also the issue of her identifying him in a lineup, or actually not identifying him in a lineup. She identified a different person and then changed the story. And I'll get to that. Okay. After the exoneration, Broadwater said, I'm not bitter or have malice toward her. And there's 2 possibilities for that. One is that he knows that she didn't do anything wrong, okay? Which is that's wonderful, that he knows how to have his anger toward the right group, which would be the justice system. And he knows she wasn't trying to do him in, she just was doing what she thought she was doing the right thing. The other possibility is, and I'm going to point this out, just because you should know this, an awful lot of people who get the Innocence Project gets off, they're actually guilty, they often say, I have no malice. In other words, like, I'm not going to hold anything against anybody. And it's like, maybe because you did it, and now you're happy you got out. because there was a case in Virginia where a guy got convicted of a serial homicide who didn't do it. And when he was exonerated, he didn't say anything nice. He was like, I'm pissed at everybody because I was innocent. So sometimes when a guy gets out and says, I don't have any malice, it's because he was actually guilty. I'm not saying it's true in this case, but I'm just pointing that out. Sometimes you have a guy with a good heart, and he does seem to have anger toward the system, but not her, because he thinks, it wasn't her fault. And I'm going to get to so many issues about the whole case. It's just fascinating. All right, so now, what happened in this case, and what happened with the evidence and the identification? All right, let's get to that. There's a really good, now, her book, Lucky, is available at Amazon. I thought it wasn't. It is. Maybe I was just cheap and didn't want to pay $26 for the hardback and wait for it to show up. I found it someplace else where you can have a free read. And I don't know that I like those places because I think some of my books are on those and I don't get paid for them. But I'm not gonna link it because I just don't know the legitimacy. But if you want a free read, you put it in. You put free PDF and you might come up with it. So, sorry. Alice, you made millions. I didn't. Okay, anyway, let me go forth now I want to read kind of what happened to her so you can sort of get a feel for what she went through, because I think this is very important. I want to talk about the difference between false reporting and actual real a person reporting a real rape. Wow, that's amazing. I found Lucky in a thrift store. How lucky was that? That is, Doreen. Good deal. Oh, that's terrible. Sorry, I have to put this up. Pat, your fake crying is more convincing than those of Mrs. Heard. Yeah. I've also had a bad relationship. It was bad. It was really bad. My God. It was hard to even get through it all. Okay. All right. Anyway, back to the story. All right. Now, I will say right here, I'm very, very, very vocal about false reporting. False reporting happens a lot more than people think. False reporting happens because somebody wants attention. Because somebody, let's say with rape reports, for example, it happens for a bunch of different reasons. One is that she hooked up with somebody she didn't want to hook up with and she didn't want to admit it, like to her parents or her boyfriend, so she just says, I was raped. It could be because she got drunk and had sex and couldn't remember if she was raped or not, or said yes or didn't say yes, and she goes, oh, he did it. He raped me. Why were you naked in his bed? I was drunk, and he shouldn't have gone further. I don't know. I have problems with a lot of the false reporting. We also have false reporting where somebody will claim they've been abducted and raped. There are many of those cases. Or that just somebody attacked them or did something to them. Sometimes they're racially motivated, like, a black person attacked me, or a white person attacked me, or a Hispanic attacked me. Sometimes it isn't even actually a hate crime in that sense. It's just that they're just trying to pick out somebody they think whatever community they live in will be sympathetic, something like that. So, I like this concept. Maybe Pat can play Amber in the movie they will make. I think I'm a little old. Revenge, that is also good. Revenge, that is another reason. It's like, I'm really pissed off at him. He sucked in bed. So, I'm going to say he raped me because I'm embarrassed that I had sex with him. All kinds of weird things. So, it happens. So, the question is, did she suffer a real rape? And this is important in this case because there are people especially in the historical part of the U.S. where a white woman may have accused a black man of committing a rape against her, possibly because she had sex with a black man consensually and she didn't want her white husband to know, or maybe because she didn't get home at night because she was drinking off her butt and her husband said, where were you? And she goes, I was raped by some black man. That has happened in the history of the United States. So the question is, we have to be very rational and say, first of all, was she raped? Okay. Yeah, let me read this from the New York Times. The young woman's face was bruised in multiple places, her long brown hair matted with bits of leaves. There was a fresh bump on the back of her head and a cut on the left side of her nose. Her tan cardigan and Calvin Klein jeans were streaked with dirt. Abrasions covered her body. Oh, let me put up the picture of where she was attacked. She was at Syracuse, got that right, I think, Syracuse University in New York, and she was attacked and there's like a tunnel here, and she was attacked in that tunnel, or going toward that tunnel, and this guy jumped out. That's what she said. Traces of blood and semen were found inside her vagina as well as on her underwear. She was just 18, a freshman at Syracuse University who had arrived and she went right to the hospital. So she did report immediately. So I give her credit on that, because it galls me, and I understand that some rape victims don't want to come forth, but if you want to save other women from the same thing, you go straight there. So you can hopefully, the evidence can be preserved, you can identify the guy, and not only do you get justice, but you don't allow a bunch of other women to be raped. So she went there, right there, and she said she'd been raped. She said the assailant was a stranger, but she studied his appearance, and this is very interesting. In her book, one of the questions is, first of all, by the way, these are her glasses that came off her face, and that's the knife he used in the attack. He came up with her and put a knife and said, I will kill you, stab you, hurt you. And I wondered how she could identify him, because sometimes when you're attacked from behind, and you're bludgeoned, and if you wake up, you're like, I'm not quite sure who did it. You have no memory, or you don't have a good description. They spent a lot of time together there. And I spent a lot of time as if it were a date. The guy almost acted sometimes like it was a date. And so he told her to do this and that. He talked to her. She saw him. She looked at his face for a long, long time. And so when you read Lucky, you will see that that is true. And I believe that. I believe this guy was kind of like one of these weird rapists. Some rapists just, get it over with quick. He does the very violent, and they're done, and they're gone. But some rapists like to play the fake date game. And he did comment on her whiteness. And just to point out, the girl's white. I'm just going to say, that's a white woman. I mean, where do I have that picture of her? Where's my picture of her? Oh, I have this good picture. Oh, there she is. Okay, here. Okay. She's pale as crap. I mean, she's very, very white, almost ghost-like. And he commented on that. And so the question could be, when as far as a victim goes, Syracuse, back in the day, and let's see, when was this? 1981, Syracuse University probably had a heavy percentage of white people there, and the black community was kind of over there, and not that wealthy, kind of poor. And so if you have those separations in history where races aren't really mixing that well, so you can get enraged people, angry people. And if you're already a rapist mentality, you might say, well, if I'm going to rape somebody, I'm going to rape her, because no, she thinks she's all stuck up. She's one of those university girls. Look how white she is, And he commented on how white she was. So whoever it was who raped her. So there was I'm not saying he raped her because she was white. I'm just saying he pointed that out. And she's really pale, So, so anyway, he's attacking her. She studied his appearance because she was, literally, there's a lot of times when she was looking at his face and parts of his body, and he was making her do things and chatting with her. So there was a lot of things going on that she could look at him. She said, the assailant was a stranger. She studied his appearance. He was small but muscular built. The way he gestured, his eyes and his lips. And this is important when it comes down to the... my God, she needs a blood transfusion. she's kind of she could be a vampire, you don't know. But she didn't do that to him. Anyway, so let me show you. So it became an issue in the identification. So she spent a lot of time looking at him, and I think that's important because this was not a case where a woman identified a guy that she only saw for a second. This is a woman who actually spent time with this dude, not willing time. She definitely was raped by the guy. There was too many injuries and all that. She was actually a virgin at the time she was raped. And So there's nobody has any question, including Anthony Broadwater. He doesn't have any question she was raped. Nobody has a question she was raped. This is not a false report. And also, to point out, she was also not it wasn't a hate crime in the sense that she reported a black man attacking her to get back at, because she was a racist. Because what happened was a person who had a darker skin tone actually did attack her. Okay. That happened to be what it is. So, that was just a description. It wasn't a racial issue. It was a description. And this is important when it comes down to some of the complaints later that this was a racist thing. No, it wasn't. She happened to be a very pale white. He happened to be black, if it was him, whoever it was who raped her, and that rapist attacked her. That's all it is. And rapists, generally speaking, don't care that much about politics or they don't or hate crimes or race or anything. They're usually kind of bland on that. You know why? Because they don't care about the world. They don't care about politics. They only care about themselves. So most of the time, a rapist committed by a rapist because for him it's fun, it's power and control. And hey, sometimes they'll pick out different people for different reasons, like, prefer like a cheerleader than a 40-year-old woman who's fat. That's just the way it is. So he might have seen her and gone, she's one of those college students. I don't feel like raping somebody. How about her? So I don't know that race did not play a part as far as why she said a black man raped her, because a black man, if you're going to go by colorism, actually raped her. All right, so you're a terrible red rum today. That wouldn't be hard, a darker tone than her. Yeah, pretty much everybody was darker than her. Oh my goodness. Hi Gretchen, you're here too. So anyway, now let's go on with what happened. 5 months later, this is what happened 5 months later. So what happened was she actually gave a description. Let me show you the description she gave. Okay, so she gave it. Hold on a second. She gave a description. She gave a description to the police, and she gave a more thorough when she was trying to do. Let me give you the basic description she gave to begin with. Let's see. Let me find it here. Here it is. All right. This was her description. Oh, it's in the middle here. Sorry. I wish to state that the man I encountered in the park is a Negro approximately 16 to 18 years of age, small and muscular build of 150 pounds, wearing a dark blue sweatshirt and dark jeans, with a short Afro-style haircut. I desire prosecution in the event this individual is caught. Okay, then she sat down and tried to make a sketch, herself. I'd written out details. I started with his hair and went next to his height, build, nose, eyes, mouth. There were comments on his face structure. Short neck, small but dense head. He really does have a small but dense head. She had that, now I'm not saying it's Anthony Broadwater, but that is a small but dense head. What else she say? Boxy jawline, hair slightly down in the front, and skin pretty dark but not black. At the bottom of the sheet in the left-hand corner, I did a sketch with him, and then she did his clothes. Okay, now let's take a look. So then what happened was so she did this, and they didn't come up with anybody. He was not she went through, I think she probably went through books and didn't find anybody that matched him in the criminal system. So she was frustrated, obviously, and then time went on, and 5 months later, she was about town, and this is Anthony Broadwater in later days. But this is the street which she was on. It was near the university. She's walking down the street, and she sees him, and she says, "Oh my God, that's him. That's the guy who raped me." Apparently, at some point, he talked to a police officer for some reason, came toward her and said, "Don't I know you, girl?" And there's a whole bunch of questions on whether he really said that. But she said, "Oh my God, that's him." And you would think if that guy was in your face and you saw his face that long and heard his voice that long, you might know who he is. So anyway, she told the police, "That's the guy." All right, so the police picked him up. All right, now, then they took him into a lineup. All right, so now the lineup thing gets a little sketchy. All right, so they had a lineup of 5 men, and this is Anthony Broadwater, and this is another guy. Now, there's a whole thing about whether the prosecution tried to tell her that he had brought in this guy as a buddy who looked close to him so that she would get confused, and he held his head down so that, he's got a domey head. That's a really domey head. But if you put your head down, it's not so domey. I don't know why they wouldn't have said, put your damn head up. I don't know why the guys didn't have to say anything. At a certain point, you want like voices. Since you heard him talk, I would have each one of these guys, go say, hey, girl, you're going to do this to me, blah, 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 so that she could hear his voice. I do a lot of other things. There's also a new methodology where when they bring you in to look at these guys, the guy who brings you in has no clue which guy it is, so he can't go, do you think it's number 5 or number 4? Can't do that crap. So what happens, she comes in and she's freaking out. And understand that when you're a victim of a crime and you come in and they put you, right there and say, which one is it? You get confused sometimes. I mean, you really can get confused. You start doubting yourself. It's not easy to remember something 5 months ago, and even though you saw him in the street and you think it's him, now they're putting these people in front of you. Now, what's interesting is she identified him from the street, okay? She walked up to him, they came eye to eye. She identified him as her rapist, but she ended up identifying this guy. Supposedly he had his head down, and this guy looked a lot like him when I guess, she couldn't quite tell the height, but I'm not saying he does exactly look like him. She said they're almost like twins. I don't quite see that. People are talking about how, like white people can't tell black people and black people can't tell white people. There's some truth to that and some non-truth to that. Personally, put a room full of blonde ladies in front of me, I can't tell any of them apart. I can't tell them apart. And of course, I suffer from something as close to facial blindness. So, this is my favorite story about my issues on witnessing and facial blindness. Is I went into PetSmart one day and was buying some food for my cat, and it wasn't on the shelf. So this guy came up and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, the food's not there." So he goes, "Oh, I'll go in the back and get it." And he did. And then this other guy walked up and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, the guy's already gone back." And he goes, What did he look like?" And I said, "I don't know, I think he's like tall and like blonde with long hair." And the guy came out and he was short, black and bald. And I'm like, and the other guy looks at me and goes, "Seriously?" And I'm like, wasn't even close, was I? Okay, that's me. So I'm a crappy witness. So if you ever want to commit a crime, do it in front of me. I'm not even going to be close. But she had time 5 months prior at a long rape where he talked to her and she saw his face over and over again. She saw him in the street and thought it was him. When it came to the identification process, I don't know. She should have recognized him regardless of whether it was the right guy, because she identified him on the street. Nobody points that out. They always go, "Well, see, she just didn't know it was him. It was just, she couldn't recognize him." But she just identified him on the street. So why did she pick this guy? I don't know, because something was happening with the way he was behaving. His head was down. And supposedly his head was down and he was going, and this guy was going, So I don't know. She got scared by this guy, so she went, okay, him. It didn't go well. But eventually the prosecution kind of went, no, it's this guy here, this guy. Not this guy, this guy. Okay, so then she said, okay, it was really him. So consequently, not the best lineup identification of a victim, okay? It was bad. Now, so he gets anyway. So they also do a hair analysis on him. Because there was semen and hair at the scene, but at the time they weren't doing DNA analysis, so they just had the hair analysis. So they put his hair under the microscope and they put it against the hair at the scene, and they said 17 points of matching, which is pretty high. And therefore, when they went to court, when she was in court, this is interesting, she could see Anthony Broadwater sitting there, okay, with his face looking at her. I don't know if she ever heard him speak at that point. Maybe at that point she truly believed it was him. Whether it was or it wasn't, she had a chance to see him moving and in action and not standing in a line. Did she then believe that was the guy? No, it was the guy. At least she believed it was. So she in court was very sure that this was the guy. And then the hair analysis, matching in these ways, convicted him, and he went away to prison. And so That's what happened in the trial. Now, the question comes down to is, was this an unsafe conviction? Was the identification questionable? Or was he actually guilty? So now let's take a look at some of the other issues in this case. I want to talk about identification issues just for a moment here. This is the problem with trying to identify people. Here's a cute sketch. This is a sketch the police did. I don't know where the hell they got that artist from, but actually the guy that got convicted kind of does look like that, doesn't he? I just think that's funny, but it was actually the right guy. Now, these are two cases where they're looking for the guy that committed the crime, and these are famous newscaster things, and they both make me laugh because, oh my God, the news anchor looks just like the freaking guy that they're looking for. Look at this. Well, this guy's like, have you seen this guy? Yeah, you're like right in front of me right now. Right in front of me right now. That's one, and this is my favorite one. Have you seen this guy? Yeah, it's you. Okay, now you see the problem with identifying. People can look a lot like other people. And first of all, too, sketches, depending on how long the person was able to see the person, how good their perception is. I'm gonna put some innocent dude in prison because I'm gonna give a description that's gonna have nothing to do with the dude, and some poor guy is gonna go to prison. All because I'm wrong. But so these sketches and trying to identify people are very difficult, and even for witnesses, depending on how much they saw, under what conditions, how close somebody else in that area could be. That looks just like them. Sometimes some people look alike. They really do. And now you put 4 or 5 guys here and you have them stand there, and when you're told point out the guy, sometimes you just freeze. And so I don't know why she didn't pick Anthony Broadwater when she just saw him on the street. I don't know. And I can't comment on that, but when she was in court, she was absolutely sure it was him. Don't know if it was or wasn't. She could be completely wrong. And but it's a difficult situation. Now, I want to talk about the hair analysis, because that's the thing that really, I think, along with the fact that she identified him, and I put identified like that, in the lineup, then he was identified by his hair matching the suspect. All right, what about the hair analysis issue? Now, what's being said now is that the hair analysis issue has been debunked, that it's garbage science, and therefore it shouldn't be listened to and paid attention to at all. This was complete nonsense. Now, where's my thing on that? I found this really good bit on the hair analysis. Okay, here we go. Is this it? Hold on a second. Where'd my hair analysis go? Sorry, hold on a second. Oh, here we go. I lost my mind here. Okay, here we go. Hair analysis. And this is, okay, the kind of hair analysis they did is called, microscopic hair analysis in forensics. Microscopic hair analysis consists of the comparison of several strands of hair under a microscope and determining the physical characteristics of each individual hair, whether they're consistent or not consistent. Okay, this was accepted in the 1950s. Researchers often monitored more than a dozen attributes. I think in his case it was supposed to be 17, including pigment distribution and scale patterns. This technique has been used in criminal investigations to try to tie hair found at the scene or another location to the actual crime. Now, some is pretty simple. If you have a black hair at the scene, black hair meaning African American, and the guy who attacked the woman was white and blonde, it ain't that guy, right? Vice versa. Okay. But then when you get into a basic category, like let's say a blonde guy attacked a woman and they found a blonde hair at the scene. Well then, it could be him. It could be. But it could be some other blonde guy, So then you have to get more technical on each part of the hair to determine, hey, is it really this blonde guy? Just to point out, the question about hair at scenes too, one of the issues is, I worked on a case a long time ago, a very frustrating case, and the woman who was killed was white, and the guy who was accused of it by the police, and they closed the case on it in the beginning. They closed the case on it. I got the case reopened, but they closed the case because they said they found a blonde hair at the scene, and the guy was blonde. It turned out that wasn't true. The actual guy who did attack her was an African American, just happened to be that. And I don't know if they lied about the blonde hair or one of the EMTs dropped blonde hair on her. I don't know where the blonde hair came from. But you got to be careful about, first of all, hair floats really easily, it falls very easily. So it can be very good, but then it can also be questionable where that hair came from, you know. So anyway, so then what happened was it became a stronger standard in the 1970s, okay? So then what happened was the crime lab the guy started testifying. Like, they could, 1 in 10,000 chance that the hairs found at a crime scene did or did not come from a suspect. In other words, it got really like, okay, if we can actually look at this microscope and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, match this guy, it's him. Only 1 in 10,000 people would have this hair. All right. So later on, it was determined that they tried to do a study on this, and they found when they were doing the study, they were told to send in these hair samples from different crimes, especially the ones who had DNA. Later on, DNA would then prove they did or didn't do the crime, and whether the hair analysis matched, the DNA matched the guy that they said the hair analysis matched. Was kind of funny because it's like, well, we know this guy actually did it, so let's send in his hair, So it's questionable whether there wasn't some, let's make sure that the evidence that shows up will then support the hair. But then they came up with the fact that maybe 1 in 10 cases, it didn't actually match the DNA. So at least 1 in 10 cases, the guy was not guilty. And there are cases where it's been proven that is true. So the question is, unfortunately, in the Broadwater case, there was semen, but they didn't analyze it back in those days, and I think then they either misplaced it or just degraded or whatever. They never tested the semen, so they can't prove that the DNA from Broadwater, in other words, that he was guilty of the crime, and then you could say whether the hair sample was not true or not true. So all we know at this point is that the hair sample, they said, matched Broadwater. Now, let me get into, let's say the hair sample is questionable. So I want to go back to something. This is where things get really confusing when you're looking back in time and you're reading reports on things. All right, so Anthony Broadwater, let's go back to who he was at the time. Anthony Broadwater lived in the town. Now, one of the things about the hair analysis we have to keep in mind is that there's only so many people in a town with certain hair, okay? So here we go. So let's say a person with red hair committed the crime. Well, if red hair is not so popular in, probably Syracuse, maybe in Ireland, but not so much in Syracuse. So if you're looking at, let's say a red-haired man attacked a woman in Syracuse, in a particular area. First of all, if he's walking in the area and he's a certain age, he probably lives around that area. So you're going to have a certain group of people that could have contributed the hair. Now, if the person said he was 20, well, you eliminate all African Americans because the guy's white. So all African Americans in the area, gone. All Asians in the area, gone. All women in the area, gone. So first of all women gone, 50% of the population in that area could have done it. Then you get rid of this group and this group and this group, and now you're down to, let's say you're down to 30%. Now you say, well, the guy's in his 20s, so none of the children could have done it, and none of the elders could have done it. So you get rid of that, and you get rid of that. Now you're down to a very small group of people of the right age, the right sex, and have the right hair. Now when you look at the hair sample, you can at least say the chances are better that this person's in this group. So now in Syracuse, there was a smaller population of black people in Syracuse. There were older black people that wouldn't have contributed that hair sample. There are younger black people who wouldn't have contributed that hair sample. So there was a small group of people that could, and women, black women couldn't have contributed that hair sample. Just black men in the area of a certain age could have contributed that hair sample. And he was in that category. So with a witness identification and a belief that the hair sample was that good, they thought it could be him. Now, let's say it could be him or 50 other men his age in the area, or let's say 200 other men his age in the area. Okay? Now the question comes in to what did the police know when they arrested him? Now, the story about him is basically he grew up with a bunch of brothers and sisters. I think his mother died early on. Brothers. Wait a minute. Let me see how many people he grew up with. I kind of forgot. Hold on a second. Let me pull up the New York Times story again. New York Times, where'd you go? Okay, I think it's this one. Okay, let me tell you about this guy. He was born. Anthony James Broadwater was born in Syracuse, the fourth of 6 boys, and lived for a while near Syracuse University. Okay, stop right there. See the problem? Now, he lived actually near the university. So you're, again, narrowing your pool. In a lot of articles, they'll say that he had no adult criminal record. And the minute they said adult criminal record, I knew they were actually saying he had a juvenile criminal record. He didn't have an adult one, but then he was very young when he was arrested. So, a juvenile record may be all he had time to get. Now, here they'll say that it wasn't a big deal. So let me show you what it says. His father worked as a janitor. His father worked as a janitor at Syracuse University. So this is another thing that puts him close to Syracuse University. A reason to be on the campus or near the campus, where other black men in the area would have no reason to be there. All right. It says here, because it's the New York Times, and they're going to tell you a story. Now, I'm not trying to tell you a different story. I'm just trying to point out when you're dealing with the media, you've got to be careful. He rarely set foot on campus. Who said that? He did? Okay. Saying he felt it was off limits to him and other young black locals. That was actually in the article. Off limits to him and other young black locals. Okay, I can see the point. That would be maybe accurate because, if you're a local guy and you're not a university student and you're wandering about, you might have security come up to you and say, hey, get off the campus. Instead, he spent time at a community recreation center and the local Boys and Girls Club. All right, that's good. When he was about 5 years old, his mother died of pneumonia. It was he and his brother Wade who discovered her body on the couch in their living room. Known as Tony, Anthony Broadwater was outgoing and rambunctious, often tussling with his siblings. Wade Broadwater recalled how his brother could get caught up entertaining a crowd and was once stopped for letting kids ride on the roof of his car. Next sentence is very important. While the police who patrolled the neighborhood were familiar with the brothers, Anthony Broadwater had never been accused of anything serious. Okay, this is called downplaying. In other words, his brothers had contact with the law. So, and I'm not condemning the father for trying to raise all these boys on his own. And obviously the father's a janitor, they're not rolling in money. It's a tough thing to grow up poor, and a lot of poor kids get in trouble because they didn't have a mother around, and they start hanging in the neighborhood doing stuff. I don't know what his brothers did. No one will talk about what his brothers did, but supposedly Anthony didn't do anything serious. Accused of anything serious, and it turns out he was accused of something like, I think it was some minor burglaries and some other stuff. He did have some police contact, let me put it that way. A skilled wrestler, he dropped out around 17 and was intrigued when a Marine Corps recruiter said he could be on a flight to California within days. I wanted to see the world and better myself, he said. Stationed in Camp Pendleton, he ended up with a cyst on his wrist. He was discharged and received disability for the injury. I don't know about the military, whether they discharge you for a cyst on your wrist. I don't understand that because a cyst is a very minor thing, so unless it blew up and you couldn't hold a weapon, I don't understand that. Let me tell you something else that happens with the military. The military will often discharge people with a general discharge or with even an honorable discharge when they want to get them the heck out of the military. In other words, if the guy exhibits psychopathic behaviors and is problematic, they'll go, we got to get rid of this dude. And they don't want to go through trying to prove anything, so they just get him out of there. Usually with an honorable discharge, not even a general. Anyway, he left, and his father was ill with stomach cancer. He took a job installing phones for a telecommunication company. Now he took his job. Now what we don't hear again is during the time when the rape occurred, what was he actually doing? Was he working at that job, or was he unemployed? Was he near the university? Was he not near the university? What was happening in his life? And I have no clue. because the media is not putting it out there. And that makes me wonder. I'm a suspicious person because I always feel like, why do they have these empty areas? Why the empty area about his juvenile thing? Why the empty area about this and this? Is it because you don't want to tell what actually he was doing because it would make him look bad? Now, looking bad doesn't mean you're a rapist. You know, it doesn't. It doesn't mean you should be convicted. I'm just saying, I want to know what that information is, and you've left it out. So, on October 5th, 1981, he and a friend drove over to Marshall Street, a stretch of restaurants and shops that had long served as a gathering place for college students. While his friend was inside a store, Mr. Broadwater recognized a police officer from his younger days, which wasn't that far back. Later in court, the officer and Mr. Broadwater will each remember calling out to each other, "Don't I know you?" And maybe, so this is puts Alice Sebold in question, whether he actually said, "Don't I know you" to her as opposed to the police officer. I don't know. At any rate, days later, he was taken into custody, and Sebold identified him as the rapist. All right, so, and he was charged with 8 felony counts, including rape and sodomy. He was 20 years old, and he went to prison, and that's what happened to him. So, now he's in prison. He always declared he was innocent, and he may well have been. Then he, as I pointed out earlier, that he got finally exonerated, okay? So now he's exonerated. And so I want to go back to this something interesting that somebody said, and I think they're incorrect. It bothers me because I don't like things that just bother me. Let me go back. After he got exonerated, this is what somebody said about her. So anyway, let me tell you what she said after he got exonerated, because this is interesting. All right, he's exonerated. Now, mind you, she's kind of like rich as crap by now because she's written these books and she's done well in life and she's had a great life. She was raped. It was brutal. She dealt with it. She got into some, I guess, drugs and stuff, and finally worked her way through it. And then she wrote these books and done well. Here's her statement. First, I want to say I'm truly sorry to Anthony Broadwater, and I deeply regret what you have been through. I am sorry most of all for the fact that the life you could have led was unjustly robbed from you, and I know that no apology can change what happened to you and never will. Of the many things I wish for you, I hope most of all that you and your family will be granted the time and privacy to heal. Now, some people will claim that's not really an apology. She's not apologizing for misidentifying him. She's apologizing for the system. And she's saying she hopes he, sorry for all he's been through and that what he was robbed of. I find it interesting. I was like, well, you know, if you wrote a book that actually said he was guilty, shouldn't all the profits from the book just go to him, just like write a check, you know? And I don't know that I see that a check was written. I'm just wondering why not. I would have done that. If I thought the guy I had accused was not guilty, I would have given every profit from this book, or half and half. I would have given 50% to him and 50% to victims of crimes. That's what I would do. I do not know what she did about that. She's not required to. I just wonder. Okay, she says, 40 years ago, as a traumatized 18-year-old rape victim, I chose to put my faith in the American legal system. My goal in 1982 was justice, not to perpetuate injustice. I believe that's absolutely correct. And certainly not to forever and irreparably alter a young man's life by the very crime that altered mine. I like that statement. She's saying I was raped, but I didn't want to accuse the wrong person and ruin his life too. You know, I only wanted to ruin the life of the real rapist and get him off the streets. That's what I wanted. I wouldn't, just because I suffered, I don't want some innocent person to suffer. I am grateful that Mr. Broadwater has finally been vindicated, but the fact remains that 40 years ago, he and another young black man brutalized by our flawed legal system. I will forever be sorry to what was done to him. Today, American society is starting to acknowledge and address the systemic issues in our judicial system that too often means that justice for some comes at the expense of others. Unfortunately, this is not a debate or a conversation or even a whisper when I reported my rape in 1981. Okay, so one of the things she was trying to say was in 1981, when she reported this, she was not aware of injustices done to black people particularly, and secondly, that she did not believe that race had anything to do with his conviction. So somebody wrote this. Okay, their story is from the LA Times. She writes, this is Lorraine Berry, she writes, Alice Sebold claims she saw No debate over racial justice in 1981, and I don't buy it. She says that she complains about the way she uses a passive voice, blah, blah, blah. And then she says this: the revisionism does not work, and I believe Sebold knows this because, in a sense, I was there. Sebold and I are both white, both born in 1963. We were both college students in the early 80s. I grew up fully aware that America treated its black and white citizens differently. Okay? And so she says she's full of crap. Let's see, let me go down here. What does this all have to do with her memory of this assault? The point is that these arguments were out in the open. These wounds were fresh when Sebold was asked to pick a man out of the lineup. So she is basically saying that she knew that black people could be treated wrongly in the justice system. She says, I'm deeply sorry for the pain Sebold suffered and the trauma of her rape. I also believe she's deeply sorry that the wrong man was convicted for the crime. I'm happy to hear that Broadwater finds her apology sincere and accept her language is constrained, perhaps by the fear of litigation. That's true. But her insistence that Americans didn't know better in 1981 than to place their full faith in a justice system that pressured her to identify the wrong suspect is patently false. Okay, here's where I have the issue. I was born in 1955. I married a black man in 1979. I also attended Howard University. So I was pretty familiar with what was going on. I knew there were, like, I knew about Black Power stuff, and I knew it was happening with, just different issues at the time. I remember going to Howard University. They had this African club one day, and since I've been to Africa before, in West Africa, I'm like, oh, I'm going to the African club. And then I went there, and they're looking at me going, oh, you do know this is about Black Power. And I'm like, oh, oops, I thought it was about Africa, but I guess it was back to Africa, I don't know. But, I knew these kind of things were happening. There was just a thing in the system, that there were issues. There were definitely issues. But what I don't think I would have known, if I were her, even though I had gone to Howard University and all that, if I had been raped by a person who happened to be black, and I was brought into the police station and they said, hey, we're helping you out here because we want this guy to go down because we know it's a black guy and you're saying it's this guy and we think it's this guy. I don't know that that's a racist system as far as that case goes, because what I don't know, and this is what I really wish I did know, is did they know something about Anthony Broadwater in his behavior that made them think he could have committed this crime? They had a witness who did say it was him by pointing him out on the street, and they did supposedly have this hair sample, which I believe they believed was accurate at the time. And I'm going to say and his father worked at Syracuse University, and he was near that campus. So the question is, did they know something about him? And he did match the description she gave us, not in the lineup, but her description of him was pretty damn accurate. So I wonder that rather than saying the police were trying to railroad a black guy at that time, this particular case, they were trying to get the guy they thought was guilty into jail so he wouldn't rape other women. They thought he was the guy. She thought he was the guy. So are there injustices in the system? Yes. But, I'm always a little leery when one just says this is caused by racial stuff. I don't believe this case was. I believe this case was just a matter of they thought they had the right guy. I'm not going to say I thought they handled when they bring her in there and they're manipulating her in any way during that lineup. I don't think that was right. I would say if I did not believe that hair sample at the time was 100% convincing, and she had those questions, I would say this is an unsafe conviction, because I don't absolutely know whether it's him or not. There's no physical evidence outside of that hair connecting him to the crime. No other witness put him in the area of the crime, although I don't know that. I don't know, actually, no. Where was he that night? I don't know. I don't know that he would know. It's 5 months later. If somebody said, where were you on that night? He's like, I don't know. And, nobody else would either. I don't know how good a police investigation was done. It may have been shoddy. So I don't know whether Anthony Broadwater actually was guilty or whether he was totally innocent. I haven't got a clue, because the evidence is questionable. But I do believe that the police believed it was him at the time, in spite of maybe what they shouldn't, the manipulations they shouldn't have done. And I believe she believed it was him at the time. And so I don't know. So when he says, he doesn't harbor any anger toward her, I appreciate that. But I don't know whether he was guilty and he's happy he's finally getting exonerated, or he was totally innocent and is finally thankful that his name is cleared. I have no idea. And I don't think anybody else does either. It's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate in a sense because there's no way to actually prove or disprove that he committed the crime. So when exoneration, people say somebody's exonerated, it doesn't mean they were proven innocent. It just means that there were problems with the handling of the prosecution, and that was an unsafe conviction, and there wasn't proper proof that he did it, and therefore he should not have been convicted. That doesn't mean he's innocent. I don't know whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent. Haven't got a clue at all. But and for her later on to say, I feel really bad for what happened. Now, does that mean that she thinks she was wrong? I don't know. The problem she has is, first of all, time has passed, and she's, you can't remember things that happened 40 years ago. So now she might very well be doubting that she had the right guy. She would go, maybe it wasn't him. I would think that maybe it wasn't him. So she feels guilty because she thinks, oh my God, maybe it wasn't the guy. That's possible. So she's very sorry that she did misidentify him. Or she still thinks he's the guy, but everybody else doesn't think that, and so she'll come off really crappy if she says, no, I think he's still the guy. She'll lose her entire career right there, because that's not a popular thing to say when a guy's been exonerated. So, and she's got a career to keep, and people are attacking her they're really attacking her for saying he did it when everybody believes, or most people believe, he did not, because he was, quote, exonerated. So if people looked at this more rationally, they would say, we don't know if he's guilty or innocent, and I don't know that she knows if he's guilty or innocent at this point. And it's just, things didn't work out as they should have back in the day, as far as quite how it was handled, and the evidence that was back in the day, that they believed those hair fibers, they believed those hair samples really were perfect. They really believed that, or at least the FBI wanted everybody to think that. So you can blame the FBI more than anybody else if they're pushing something they knew wasn't as accurate as they were telling everybody. So maybe the FBI is really the guilty party in this, and maybe I can't exonerate them. All right, let me take a look at your comments. I've been away here, so I've not been able to see anything. So let me go back a little bit. Let's see what we have here. That's a good point. Lisa says, I think that victim recollection is tainted by the trauma of their experience, just as eyewitness statements aren't very reliable. This can be true, very true. The only thing that makes me think she knows more than most victims is because she spent a lot of time face-to-face with him, and he talked a lot. He talked a lot. And I believe her rendition. It's very believable. I think he attacked her, and whoever it was, and was vicious toward her to some extent, and then he started pulling back, like she was, like, if you cooperate with me like a date, and then we're happier. And then she tried to do those things, and then he mocked her, and all kinds of things went on. So she spent a long time hearing his voice and seeing his face, more so than most victims of crime. So I tend to believe that she had a pretty good grasp on what he looked like. But could he have just looked like somebody else? But I want to know who that somebody else was in the town that looked so much like him that she would identify him. I don't know. Yeah, but that's possible. Let's see. Carrie says the hair analysis in this case occurred before mitochondrial DNA. Yeah, way before. So it's basically you're looking at, is it curly? Does it have different colors in it? Is it, whatever, there's different striations or whatever. I'm not, a forensic examiner on hair analysis, but yes, there will be different kinds of hair for different kinds of people. And it would narrow the field. That's what I believe it would have done. Narrowed the field, but not necessarily identified one specific person. So usually you'd use that as part of your evidence. And they did. They used it as part of their evidence along with identification. The problem was, today they would say, this is interesting evidence, along with other evidence, more so than just a witness, just for her to identify him. In other words, it would narrow the field, and then she would identify somebody in that field. And then there would be other evidence, maybe in his car, in his home, whatever, DNA. But back in that day, instead of saying it puts him in this category but isn't absolute, they said it was absolute, and that was the failure, because it's not absolute. Let's see. I'm trying to understand this. The size of the sample study often affects the percentage of the match. Oh yeah, that's true too. So there's a lot of issues about when you say something is 100% as opposed to 50% or 90%. There's a lot of details that go into that, indeed. So I think he did it. So there. I don't know. Personally, Red Rum, I don't know. I can't say he did or he didn't, because there's not enough to convict. That's all I can say. There's not enough. He would be a good suspect. I never have an issue with a good suspect. If I were back in the day and she identified him and he had the connections to Syracuse University and he had the right basic build and hair and all that kind of stuff, I would say he's a good suspect. But then I'd look for enough to prove he was actually the guy, and there wasn't a cousin who looked like him or some other dude he didn't even know that also circled around that area and just happened to look similar to him and was kind of a criminal nature. I would want to have more than what was there before I'd say he was guilty or innocent. I would not know. Let's see, anything else here? Maybe the hair was from his father. Well, that is actually a great point, Anne. Hold on a second, I'm going to take my drink. That is so good. I love that. You just thought of something very intelligent. Okay, hair transfer. Transfer of evidence. That can be true. Not that his father committed the crime because he's the wrong age. But his father was also in his home. I don't know if they were living together at the time. I take that back. I don't know if he was living with his dad at the time or whether he had his own place or he had a roommate. I can't get that information. At least I haven't researched hard enough. Let's say he's living with Daddy. And Daddy's hair is in that home too. And so are every one of his brothers. So he could easily have their hair on his clothing. I can't remember if it was pubic hair or something else. But anyway, his hair would be on his clothing. It could be, very easily. Hair transfers like very fast. So he could be raping her and his brother's hair could fall on her. His cousin's hair could fall on her. His dad's hair could fall on her. Matter of fact, he could have just had sex with another woman who happened to be black and her hair fell on her. You know what I mean? So and also, you're rolling around on the ground, can be hair on the ground. I mean, that's why now the concept is if it's absolutely 100% match, then it doesn't matter. It wouldn't be, in other words, it would match his dad then. It would match his cousin. But the question is, how accurate is it to the actual person? But there's a lot of interesting problems with the hair analysis, which again should be a portion of the issue, not so much of it. So I have issues with that. So yeah. Oh, this is good. Interesting point. Oh yes. Doreen says it's a shame they didn't have him say something in the lineup. Yeah, I would have if I were working this. I'd have a voice lineup. I'd have a sight lineup. I don't know. I'm not a detective. Okay, and I'm not working on a police force. And each police force and departments have different ways of handling things. But I would have a voice lineup because she spoke to him for so long. I'd have her say whatever basically he said. I have a small script. I have each one of them read the small script. I do a baseline first, So I'd have him say normal things first, like, "Hey, are we going to go to the store? I want to buy this. I want to do that." So that when he got to the part with her, he wouldn't go, "And then I think this," or "Yes, I'm very upset that the IRS has been after me. Would you like to have sex with me?" No, it changes voice and tone and everything, completely different. I would make sure he had the baseline, and then I'd have him do a script that she basically, from her words of what he said. And then I'd have her listen to how many ever of those voices, and I'd have her say, can you pick out the voice? And if she can say, if she could pick him out of a lineup, and then she could pick his voice out too, and that voice was Anthony Broadwater, you got a better case. I don't think they did that, which is unfortunate. And again, maybe it's because the FBI convinced them that their hair analysis was 100% perfect, instead of being just helpful to getting it to a smaller group of people. I don't know. But I don't think we'll ever know. But I do want you to understand, in the long run, exoneration doesn't mean proof of innocence. It just means that the case was, I say I'm going to go with the Commonwealth version because I love it, unsafe conviction. I don't believe with what they had, it was a particularly good conviction. I don't know. And so I will not say if he's guilty or innocent. I will say he's been exonerated. If he was guilty, well, I'm glad you got 16 years, dude. If you're innocent, I'm sorry you got 16 years, because that sucks. That sucks and it ruins your life. And so he's going to get a lot of money from the state. He's, obviously sued, and he's going to now have a lot of money. Maybe not from her, but a lot of money. But, if he's innocent, it doesn't make up for 16 years in prison and then trying to live your life after that when everybody thinks you're a rapist. He did manage to get married. Apparently told the woman, hey, look, you got to check out what they put me in prison for. I'm saying I'm innocent, but you got to know. He said he never wanted to have children, and he never did, because the world he lived in, he wasn't happy with. So if he was innocent, he really did get a raw deal. And, to get exonerated when you're, 40 years later, it's nice, but, you're in your 60s, and it's like, well, thanks a lot for ruining the biggest portion of my life. So that's why it's very, very important to me that we have good investigation, have good convictions, because I don't want a guilty guy to go free, and I don't want an innocent man to be convicted. And I don't want somebody to be in limbo forever, because you never know. And I think that's the thing. You never know. So, this is Molly says, what did Molly say? What are you saying here? Today with body cams, the baseline voice would be captured along with video at the time of the arrest. That's that's some interesting stuff too. Of course, that, that doesn't, she would have to still, just because it's, they arrest him and they have a body thing and they hear his voice, doesn't mean that she would still have to do a lineup, because then she could say, well, that's the guy you arrested and it's him. So, so I think you gotta really handle things well, and I don't think they did that. I don't, and so I think everybody lost, unless he was guilty, in which case he won. That's why I said lucky or unlucky. She was unlucky. She got raped, and now she's been called, that she got the wrong guy convicted. That's not pleasant for her. I feel bad for her. If he was innocent, he was unlucky, and if he was guilty, he's lucky. That's all I can say. And I just don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for today. We're going to have, on Tuesday, we're going to have a call-in, and that'll be fun. And then on Thursday, we'll have the hangout, and then we'll have another case next Sunday. And all fun and good. So, at least years later, when we're not involved in the crime ourselves. So, because if we were, we wouldn't be so happy about all this stuff, But I do hope that, again, one of my point of my shows is to get people to understand evidence and profiling, so that we don't just point fingers and have no clue what we're talking about. We have emotional responses to things when we, hey, the person's innocent, hey, the person's guilty, but we don't know, and we're just, going with what we feel. I want us to understand the evidence and know where we stand on the evidence. And, there's some cases which I'm very sure I know the person's guilty as hell. And there's some I truly believe they're innocent, and there's some I just don't know. So the case that I just did, the Lundy case in New Zealand, I lean toward the evidence. There's things that just make me think he didn't do it, but the evidence, is so sketchy. I just don't know whether he did or did not do it. With Broadwater, I haven't got a clue. I have no clue if he's guilty or not, because I don't know. There's no alibi. His father did work on the campus. He had some little issues. I don't know. Could be totally innocent, could be totally guilty. But, you know, the hair did put him in a group, and they did come up with enough stuff that it could well be him, and then she did identify him, even if she screwed up on the lineup. So yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know. But we need to do better so that we do know. I think that's what's important. We need to do better. We do. So anyway, thank you very much for being here, everybody. Molly says, thank you, Pat. Interesting scenarios in this case. And that's what, thank you, Doreen. That's what I'm trying to do, is to get you to, you know, think about different kinds of things and more understanding than, you know, just a cool story. More understanding. So anyway, thank you for being here. It's been grand, and I will see you maybe if you're a Patreon and you're on the level that comes in for the call-ins. I'll see you on Tuesday. And if you would like to be a Patreon and support the channel, which really does need supporting, do click below and you can join any of the lives at different levels for, you know, and then you can participate in the regular case file lives on Sunday and Fridays. There's 6 of them per month, and then there's a hangout every week, and then twice a month a call-in, which you can actually call in and have a discussion with me, and we can talk about all kinds of interesting things. Then, or if you don't want to do that, just subscribe again. Subscribe and like this, like the like the video. Keep me alive. Oh, there's also a $sign now, and you can click on the $sign and donate to the channel on a one-time thing. So anyway, that's it. I hope I see you shortly.